It'll be less than a minute now. All right, I now have 2:05. I'll admit one last person, and then I will focus on the presentation. First and foremost, welcome, thank you, Merry Christmas. I'm pleased to have you here and to host. This is organized by the Rudolf Steiner branch of Chicago. We thank you for your understanding, owing to a number of recent harassment attacks against anthroposophical initiatives. We're being a bit more restrictive with the socializing in order to reduce the likelihood that if someone were to come in bad faith and try to disrupt things, that it would have impact. Zoom as a company has informed one of our colleagues at the branch that there's a hacker group specifically attacking this and other spiritual organizations. They're aware of it. They're taking steps to mitigate it, but they also recommended we take these procedures. So thank you for your understanding. In this mode, we, the hosts, can see you, and when it comes time to question and answer period, we'll ask that you raise your hand or use the raise hand feature to indicate a question, and then we can turn on your video to share with others. But until then, unfortunately, you won't be able to see each other. When I hand over the microphone to our guest speaker, I will also be sure that everyone stays muted to prevent interruption, either by accident or through malice. And God willing, this will just be a good, peaceful Holy Night's presentation. I'd also like to note that if you are in the Chicago area, Elderberries, our associated organization, our anthroposophical sister initiative in the same building as the branch, is hosting this as a live in-person event, and you're welcome to join, both today and the future Holy Nights events. So if that's something that you can do, you're welcome to do it. And I'll also mention that if you have your video on and it's clear that you're not attentive, either having stepped away or attended to some other things, I may stop your video just to make sure that we're utilizing the bandwidth we have available as best as we can, and that nothing accidentally inappropriate shows up. So that won't be a kicking out, it'll just be a stopping your video. And now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Ross Rentea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Obviously, I would like to start by thanking the Rudolf Steiner branch, who was very kind to invite me to speak during these holy nights. And that gives me the opportunity to talk about some things that are really very dear to my heart. And so I would like to begin with this very brief introduction that I've just made. And it is that we have a difficult journey ahead of us. And the reason why it's a difficult journey is because our culture has trivialized the entire event of Christmas and of the nights that follow that Christmas, that holy night of Christmas. And the trivialization is obvious to everybody. Christmas has degenerated to gift giving. We call it Merry Christmas. Even that is actually a problem nowadays. And even anthroposophists greet each other with have happy holidays. But the concept itself of the 12 holy nights has disappeared completely. And when we talk to the people that we know, they all admit that they've never heard that there was any importance there. However, we know from Rudolf Steiner's research that one of the most important moments of the year is the Christmas night and the 11 nights that follow, so the 12 so-called 12 holy nights, and especially the first 7 nights. And the reason why it's important is because it is not a time when we are called to remember, when we're called to remember some traditional event, but rather it is something that occurs in reality every year in this time, in these 7 nights, perhaps 12, meaning that in these nights, the Christ being is actually wanting to come very, very close to the human beings in their sleep. And this coming actually needs to be prepared. It actually needs to be anticipated. It needs to change our soul life in such a way that we would be worthy to really receive him. And the more we do that, the more we reach all the way to the stage of an initiate, the more the Christ being can interact with us and leave that those impulses that Rudolf Steiner says are actually crucial for the rest of the year. So that the things that, the way he explains it is that whatever will impulses we have during the holy nights, they will be able to be transferred and actualized, if you will, through the year and become conscious, especially all the way into Easter. So the question is, how do we do that? And that's what I would like to share with you and just give you some of my suggestions and cogitations in that direction. And of course, I am going to rely on Rudolf Steiner's work. And let's see if this hopefully enriches us a little bit. And then after that, I really, really want to stress that whatever you hear today, most of it or all of it, you will know. I just mean to bring it back to our consciousness and say, we then need to do it. We need to meditate it. We need to move it. We need to take it in, etc. So that's all self-understood for us. So let's just start with this, and let's just start with a tradition. And the tradition tells us that historically, the 3 kings approached the Jesus child, and they gave him the gifts that we all know. And these gifts actually are traditionally known as the gold, the frankincense, and myrrh. But Rudolf Steiner presents now a new picture of what is a new way to celebrate Christmas. And that's important, that now we're entering what is new. And what is new is that you can see that he makes a pastel or crayon drawing. And there you see the 3 kings. And now suddenly there is a rose cross in the picture. And I would like to interpret it, and I would like to make the comment first that every single meditation or spiritual event can have, according to Rudolf Steiner, at least 7 interpretations, if not more. So I will follow one particular trend of thought here, And I'm sure that there are others, but just stay with me on one possibility. How's that? So what we have here is the possibility to think that the three gifts could be interpreted also this way, that when the three kings are bringing the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh, they are actually bringing symbolically the movement that is coming from the stars, the gold, from the sun. The activity on earth that is symbolized by the frankincense and that is used at the cultus during the religious service. And they bring the myrrh as an entry back into the spiritual world. I hope that you get sort of a feeling from this. I will not persist on it very long. But what I'm trying to say is that all the movements that are spiritually coming from the spiritual world into the physical world are actually summarized as the Father God principle. And everything that is now on earth that is spiritually suffused, that is now being acted on, and that is being created new, that is the Son God. And the realizations that come to us when we go back into the spiritual world and are becoming awake and aware of what's going on, that is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit God. So basically, the three kings represent the fact that in order to approach the Jesus child in a dignified manner, they need to bring, and this is my point in this lecture, they need to bring the forces of the Trinity. And only after they have mastered and conquered the forces of the Trinity can they not only see in front of them the Jesus child in the lap of his mother, but rather they can go a second step, a step beyond that, and they can experience now a new moment. And that's sort of a difficult thing to understand at first, but let's see if we can get familiar with it. They can experience now the Christ in me. So I'm not looking at the Father God, at the Son God, at the Spirit God, the Son God in the Trinity, which from a certain point of view is still outside of us, but rather now I'm ready to experience the Christ in me, represented here through the rose cross, meaning that when I approach my higher ego, I come to the Christ in the etheric world, but I want to make that short. But the principle, the esoteric principle that I would like to share with you is this, that we need to bring the Trinitarian principle, the Trinity. We need to awaken that in us to actually come to the Christ in me. So I would like to see if we can actually see this more concretely in Rudolf Steiner's indication and path. And so I would like to show you here a crucial moment, and you'll have to forgive me 1 second. Every once in a while, I need to move the pictures over so that they do not cover the slide. And I am showing you, let's just say, the beginning and then the unfolding of the act of consecration of man in the Christian community. Now, I was made aware of the fact that Rudolf Steiner gives a course in September and October of exactly 100 years ago, so 1921, in which he actually begins to give the words of the act of consecration. So we're actually in good company, so to speak. After 100 years, one is allowed to perhaps to understand some details that were not clear 50 years or 75 years ago. So this is the beginning of the act of consecration. And the act of consecration says, let us worthily fulfill the act of consecration of man out of the revelation of Christ, in reverence of Christ, in mindfulness of Christ's deed. And what caught my attention, and this is where I started actually, is the fact that then the participants in the act of consecration are doing 3 crosses over the forehead, over the mouth, and over the chest larynx down below. So one says, the Father God be in us, the Son God create in us, the Spirit God enlighten us. And the end, the result of that is Christ is in you. And then the server answers to the priest who represents the community, and may he fill your spirit. So if you really, and to the extent to which you really experience the Father God, and experience the Son God, and experience the Spirit God. So in as much as you have incorporated the Trinitarian principle in you, then you experience the Christ in you. Now, this moment, the 3 crosses, are repeated 7 times through the act of consecration. So the first time you do the 3 crosses, and then there are no words, and one goes over to answer Christ is in you. The second time when you do it is the reading of the epistle. So this is the development of the Trinitarian impulse. But the end of it is always the same. Now the Christ being is in you. The third time, the 3 crosses are being done, that they need to be imprinted in you. You need to experience them. And then the development of that now is the gospel. The result is the same. Then the Christ will be in you. So that goes all the way to the communion and all the way to the final epistle. So that happens 7 times. So in the course of a roughly 1 hour, one is given this Trinitarian impulse. May I say, the 3 doors that have been opened now, so that one can say, Christ in me, Christ is in you. Well, to make this even more specific, we can look at the Christmas events in the Christian community involving the act of consecration of man during Christmas. And now again, forgive me just 1 second. Let me see if I can move these images out of the way. And what happens now is that in the Christian community, there are 3 services, 3 acts of consecration of man, one of them at midnight, the other one in the morning, and the third one at midday, towards midday, 11 o'clock or so, but certainly before noon. And before and at the beginning of each one of these services, there is an epistle. there is a letter to the community, there is an alert, there is a text that is being read to point you in the direction that you are meant to go spiritually. So the epistle, this is Rudolf Steiner, of course, the first epistle that is being read at midnight is different from the epistle for the morning, different for the epistle at noon. So what I would like to point out, of course, is that I have not given you here the entire text of the epistle, but just the meaning so that we can begin to work with what is the Father God, what is the Son God, what is the Spirit God. And at midnight, the epistle that is read there is that into the earth's night, and the other sentence is into the senses darkness, there shines the Spirit's healing light of grace. It shines to us. It's important that we always follow this. If it's this movement that goes out of the cosmos, that goes out of the spiritual world to us, that is associated with the Father God principle. And now look what happens in the morning service. In the morning service, suddenly the words are, our soul feels the nearing of the healing creator word, so that it may touch our speaking and warm our speech-bearing blood. I don't think that one needs too many other words here. That is the Son God that is creating, that is in our rhythm of speaking, of blood circulation. He is being directly addressed here. And then at noon, towards noon, we say, it's being read, the epistle there is Christ, the revealing creator spirit, frees the human being from the undignified senses cravings. It is that, which we will come to later on, practice spirit seeing, practice spirit beholding, practice that moment where you are not fettered anymore to the material senses, but rather where you go over and begin to see the revelation of the spiritual world. Now, all three of these moments are related, of course, to the Christ being, because remember that right after the epistle, you will hear the words Christ in you. So it's the same principle again. And at this point, I would like to go over to the next moment, and that is that I would like to share with you something that has a slightly complicated history. And the complicated history is that Rudolf Steiner gives in October of 1922, so 99 years from now, before now, he gives a meditation. And this meditation is important for us today during this lecture, because it relates to another Christmas principle. And I would like to explain it. I would like to relate to you what Rudolf Steiner says about it. And it is briefly something like this, that during the year, every human being gets touched at night by their guardian angel. And this guardian angel has a great importance in guiding us, for example, through life, from life to life, etc. But let's just hold on to the fact that if we are prepared right, then the guardian angel will touch us every night. Between Christmas and the 12 nights, there is a higher meeting that happens only once a year. Now, we have said already that that meeting happens through the Christ being, that the Christ being approaches us. But the Christ being does not do it directly, but rather the Christ being uses, quotation marks, an archangel being to approach us. So during the year, it's an angelic being. At Christmas and the next nights, one time there, it is an archangel that comes and touches us so that the Christ being can come to us and be in me. This archangel, I think one can truly say, is Michael, because he is the highest archangel who is the face of the Christ being. Consequently, we would be happy if we would have a meditation that would prepare us to not only meet the Christ being, but rather to be connected specifically to Michael, who then can lead us to the Christ being. And now we come to a great mystery and a great gift that Rudolf Steiner gave, which is that at one point, briefly, at one point, he is approached by young people who ask him, September, October, who asked of 22, who asked him, how can we become servants of Michael? How can we come closer to this archangelic archai being? And Rudolf Steiner answers that by giving them this beautiful, rather complicated meditation. And I will make another comment about that in a minute. But the way this meditation is that in the evening, before you go to sleep, the meditation, you would use the first part of the meditation. So let's go back to this. You would do this first portion. That is the evening, or towards preparing for the night. Just that portion. And I have put it down here, both in German and in English, and I will read it in German because, as usual, I would like the people that might want to listen to all this again to really hear the way it sounds in German and maybe even practice it that way. But essentially, Rudolf Steiner says, imagine a mild sun in the sky, and the meditation is consisting out of 3 parts. The first part is, may there warm us, the sun soul, in my head. May there illuminate the sun spirit in my heart. So am I. Then the sky lightens, becomes blue, And we have the three words, the three lines: I am, soul lives, spirit works. And finally, there's an illumination, there's more light coming in, and it says, I in the world being, soul in the spirit willing, spirit in God's doing. So now, let me read it one time in German. Es wärme die Sonnenseele in meinem Haupt. Es leuchte der Sonnengeist in meinem Herzen. So bin ich. Ich bin, Seele lebt, Geist wirkt. Ich im Weltensein, Seele in Geistes Wollen, Geist in Gottes Tun. Okay, that is your evening meditation. Now let's look at it a little bit. You see, there are three parts to this meditation. The first part, may there warm the sun soul in my head. I think that it is not too much of a stretch to see that the sun soul, that the sun spirit comes into us, into our head, into our heart. That's what creates us. The Father, God principle. Then I am, and the soul lives, and the spirit works, again, without interpreting that part right now, is what we do when we are filled with the Spirit on earth. We live. We spiritually work. This is the part where we create spiritual realities on earth. And then we go back out into another spiritual world that was not there before. A new world being, where the soul is suddenly in a spirit willing, where the spirit is in God's doing. I believe that this is moving into the new etheric world that the Christ is actually living in. So that's the Holy Spirit. And when these three are really penetrated in our heart, when this new Trinity that I'm showing right now is actually becoming a reality, then we come to that last line that I've signified it as Rudolf Steiner. Here, 4 lines. Where Rudolf Steiner says, the Christ in me, Christus in mir. And he advises that when one writes it down, one should not actually write it down, so that it would have a more esoteric strength. So once again, after we have gone through the Trinity experience, we are now coming to the result, which is this new connection between the active, real, present Christ being in us, as opposed to looking at it from the outside. And of course, well, not of course, but you saw that the meditation is continuing here, continuing with a second part, continues with a third part. so that in the morning now, one would meditate the two together. So it would be, may there warm us common feeling. The sun soul fire us up with holy fire. In my head, may there live also your thinking. May there illuminate us common light. The sun spirit illuminate us with, mistake here, I need to correct that, with pure light. No matter how much one tries to make sure, there's always something that creeps in. In my heart, may there live also your willing. So am I with you, you with me. The other part stays always the same. Now I can show you how the third part would be, which is meditated at noon. I think you begin to see the connections that I'm trying to make. That we can say, may there warm us common feeling to human deeds. But if I just stay with this for a second, there's a reason for that. Let me see if I can go back. Yes, I can go here to the third part. Let me just see if I can find my pointer and get this one out of the way. The reason I'm showing you this, because you can find this meditation that belongs to an esoteric group that was formed as an endowment by Rudolf Steiner. And this has come to be known as the Esoteric Youth Circle. Now, I have become a member of this circle and done this meditation for roughly 40 years. And in the beginning, by the 1970s or 80s, if you will, this was handled such, for a reason that I'm not going to go into right now, that it was fairly secretive, in the sense that people that were joining this circle, that were doing this meditation, not only had a connection to Michael, but they wanted specifically to do something in that direction. And they would approach somebody else and they would talk, and the question would come over to Michael and the being of Michael and who he is and how can we do more and so on. And then the person that knew of this meditation would share it with them if they would want to. So that was just given from person to person very nicely, from mouth to ear, not ever made known to the outside world until 96 or 98 or so. The author rights of all the material that Rudolf Steiner had created expired. So then it was published, so that you can now find it in the collective works, freely available. And 1, 2, 3, I'm not sure exactly how many years ago, it was published in English, and it's available through Steiner Books. And I've put it there in the volume called Esoteric Lessons, 1913 to 23. So, first of all, I don't believe that I am, committing an esoteric betrayal. But it is rather a new step, if you will, that some people, myself, are very concerned that this do not disappear. So people that have a connection, that feel that this meditation speaks to them, they would like to do it. Well, it's available, of course, here in these slides. But I would suggest that that you would need to buy that book. And full disclosure, I do not own stock in the Rudolf Steiner books. If you just get the books, it's in the second half of the book, The Esoteric Youth Circle. You can read a lot of details, how it came about, who were the people that were participating first, how Rudolf Steiner intended it to be, and very importantly, the fact that these people came to Rudolf Steiner at one point with problems, and instead of answering to their problems, he just gave them an esoteric lesson. Then, of course, during the Christmas Foundation conference, they asked Rudolf Steiner, well, if you're saying that all our esoteric striving should be gathered together now in one school, under one head, does that mean that we should stop our meditation and wait for something different? And instead of telling them, you should continue, Rudolf Steiner gives them the so-called second esoteric lesson on the 30th of December, on Sunday, in the middle of the foundation meeting. That's an answer too. So I have introduced it. For those that are interested, the material is there. You can access it. And however, I will make one more comment, which is probably the most important one, which is that there is one thing missing in there, how to really connect yourself with it. And that's something that I personally believe in. Rudolf Steiner has never made that comment that I feel needs to be made. But if there is somebody who actually has studied that particular content and feels that that is answering a call in them that was not answered by other works of Rudolf Steiner's, and you really have studied it and you've really looked at the meditation, before you've done a lot of the meditation, but you've really looked at the whole content and you say, this is what I was waiting for. Then you can give, then you can send an email that you would like to discuss it more to the Kolisko Institute, info@kolisko.org, koliskoinstitute.org, and that I can assure you we will answer, because that's very important to a whole number of us who are interested in the esoteric youth circle. But I want to repeat that this is why that I'm bringing, well, not repeat perhaps, but I just want to say that definitely there are beginnings where Rudolf Steiner is talking about Michael already in 21, obviously, but the actual founding of the circle and its esoteric importance was started by Rudolf Steiner in 1922. So now it's 99 years, but at the end of 22, in October, it'll be 100 years. And a number of us friends have decided that we will hold a conference, and hopefully that will be an in-person conference. But if not, I now understand that some of our anthroposophical friends are really getting good at it for how to create hybrid conferences. So some people can come, some people can be present, Others will follow maybe through a Zoom-like device. I'm not so sure if we will do a Zoom thing, because much as is being facilitated, there's one thing that you cannot do on Zoom, which is to shake hands with the other person and form a different kind of a karmic connection. So we will have a conference, however, and so I thought that instead of telling people that, well, it's been 100 years and gee, guess what a great thing is here now, but you've never heard of it, those that would want to can prepare for it. And I am positive that among the participants today, even there's a number of people, and some of them I know, of course, who are members of the youths of the esoteric youth circle. So so they can also prepare and know that we're intending to do this conference. And it will be on that weekend of, including October 13 of 2022, because that's when Rudolf Steiner gave the meditations for the first time. So I hope that this will stimulate one or the other person. This was actually the core that I wanted to get to today, that for the Holy Nights, there is now a meditation that everybody can have, that they can try one time, of the Trinity, ending with in me, connecting to Michael, connecting to the Christ being. So let's go to the next part, and that is that, of course, you know, the most monumental, let me just adjust, please, my screen. The most monumental example of what we have been talking about is the foundation stone meditation, where directly the Father God, the Son God, and the Spirit God are addressed in the first three panels in such a way that then there comes a fourth panel that directly ends in the prayer that the Christ Son, may it warm us and may it enlighten us, so that it can really be in us, in our hearts, and in our heads. Incidentally, if you would compare the evening meditation or the circle meditation with this fourth panel, you will have a very, very significant surprise that can really occupy one and mystify one for at least a year, so that we can talk about that maybe then. But this one here, I just wanted to remind you that that is there. And the reason why I brought it in, and the reason why I'm calling it, it's the most monumental, is the fact that, if you remember that I talked about this before, maybe a year or two ago, that in 1911, Rudolf Steiner gives a number of lectures through the whole year 1911, starting in February, ending in August or later. And there he speaks of the fact that the child is developing because the Christ being is helping the child to develop the thinking, the feeling, the willing, the walking, the talking, and the thinking. Basically helps the child to bring the Trinity forces in such a way that the child can develop all the way into the 3rd year, roughly. And then in the 3rd year, the Christ being, Rudolf Steiner tells us, steps back, allows the child's own ego to now take over the best it can, these Trinity forces. And now we use them as walking, talking, thinking. And now Rudolf Steiner makes a statement that for me is absolutely unimaginably big. This is 1911 that I'm still talking about. And that statement is that later on in life, these 3 forces that bring you to the Christ being can be achieved again if one would use a deep meditative activity. And as far as I'm concerned, he comes back to this as an ultimate gift, probably a sacrifice on his part, which is that during the Foundation Stone Conference, during the Christmas conference from 23 to 24, Christmas time, at Christmas time, Rudolf Steiner then, excuse me, Rudolf Steiner then gives this meditation where we can meditate in the most central way, in the most Michael connected way, in such a way that we come to the Christ being. So before that, he had given the act of consecration, he had given the circle meditation, and now he, like a culmination of his entire life's work, he gives this meditation. So I wanted to bring it because it has the same principle in it. And, you know, it goes, and again, one needs to just meditate on it. And what I would like to continue with is the fact that the same principle, the Trinity, now we know where it is meant to lead us, something that is not written down, something that needs to happen as a mystical, mysterious, esoteric experience, is that he gives for every day of those 7 days following Christmas. He gives for every day a Trinitarian, a Trinity meditation. And this year, it's important because Christmas was on Saturday, and this is the beginning with the old Saturn. This is the beginning of the experience, and then it goes all the way from Saturday into Friday. And you can just follow it in your soul, and we can see where it leads us. Now, there is one more layer that I would like to mention, and that layer is the following: that we have come to the fact that we have talked about the Christ being, we have talked about the Archangel Michael, and there's one more layer, and that layer is that Rudolf Steiner describes at one point, March 13, 1917, he describes that the human being is formed out of 4 members: physical body, etheric body, astral body, and ego. But then these would wither if they wouldn't receive an additional 3 members: the spirit self, the life spirit or Buddhi, and the spirit man. So these three are what happens when the ego has consciously penetrated the astral body, the etheric body, and the physical body, when it has been able to transform them. But the human beings today do not have that yet. But they need to have it. Rudolf Steiner says it's inescapable that if they would not get that, we would not persist as a human race. So the spiritual world has, in its grace, given us the opportunity to be touched by the principle of the spirit self. And that principle is being taken, for the time being, it's being taken over. The spirit self is being taken over by the angels. So our angel touching us every night gives us that sense that needs to come from the spirit self. And we could talk one time, about that, what that means. And then one time a year, during these days, the nights, right? Days, nights. From Christmas, 7 days mostly, maybe a little bit longer into the 12, yeah? Now we are being touched not by the angel, but by a higher being, the archangel, with the help of the Christ being, but just touched by the archangel. And the archangel gives us the sense, the replacement, that which we don't have yet, of the life spirit or the Buddhi. Now, the reason why that's important is because there is a phenomenon that we all can experience right now, today, that is coming from the life spirit, from the Buddhi. And that is eurythmy. So eurythmy is found sometimes characterized as, well, that's an ego activity. Other times, well, that's an etheric activity. Of course, there's a soul involved. But let's just leave it right now that it is the ego going into the etheric body and giving the beginning of the Buddhi, the beginning of the life spirit. And that originates at Christmas time. So one of the deepest eurythmists that worked with Rudolf Steiner asked him one time, how can I understand eurythmy better? And Rudolf Steiner answered to her, understand Christmas and you will understand the being of eurythmy. So there is nothing more important that we can do in these days than to do our meditation and to do eurythmy. So that's why I'm adding one more set of slides here, which is that here is the fourth panel at the turning point of time. This is the form that the eurythmists are going to be moving on stage. But all the verses, all the lines, all the words, the lines, are accompanied by the eurythmical gestures of I-A-O. So, I-A-O, and I've just put this here. Somebody really wants to look at it. If you have not seen it before, I've presented it again, so I can make it a little bit shorter now. Each one of these lines is accompanied by either an E, an A, or an O. So there is signs of the zodiac that are being made in the beginning that I will not go into right now. And then you bring up your hand and you go into an E in the middle zone of your body. Then you open it up and you say, ah, and you bring the hands together and make an O. So at the turning point of time in E, cosmic spirit light descended into earthly stream of being. O. And then you just go like that, E-R-O, it'll be 6 times through the entire fourth panel. And the reason why this is so moving is because, as I'm sure most of you know, the E-R-O is the Christ speaking in man. So doing the fourth panel, after having meditated on the Trinity on the previous 3, now you come to the fourth panel, and there you're actually resounding with the Christ being in you. And the more one connects with that, of course, the deeper it goes. And Rudolf Steiner one time said that in the communion at the Christian, at the act of consecration of man, in the beginning, one needs to form thought forms. And these thought forms would actually attract these spiritual beings to the bread and the wine until it becomes a reality. But he says, if you do not actually form those thought forms to begin with, those gifts are being rejected. So one needs to really keep that in mind. One needs to start with the thought forms. So I'm coming slowly towards the end, and I just want to leave you with a couple of imaginations that you might like to see. And one of these imaginations is that we were talking about the Rose Cross, and we're talking about the fact that we need to have that principle in us in order to find the Christ being in the etheric world, the Rose Cross, and what are these forces that are behind this Rose Cross? And you can see them here. There are, can you see? It's not very clear, but you see here these rays one time, you see here a ray, and you see here a ray. So there is this mysterious threefold raying that is behind, or in front of, if you will, this Rose Cross. So that when we approach this building that in the artistic conception of the painter shows Brother Marcus, story by Goethe, which Rudolf Steiner calls a Christmas and Easter mystery story. He approaches this temple and he is asking, how did this Rose Cross come about? So I wanted to go into the temple, and of course, imaginatively, it is the Goetheanum. And this painter that made the painting that Rudolf Steiner saw and appreciated very much, and asked him to expose it, to just show it. Here you see the Christ being in the middle, between Sagittarius and Capricorn, which is the Christmas moment. So in the Goetheanum, the group, the Christ imagination is indeed in the Christmas moment that we are entering today. Well, that we're entering on the 24th in the evening, 25th, and for the next couple of days. And when the Goetheanum was built, then this was the card, the membership card. And if you see how the letters were placed? Ex Deo Nascimur, the Father God, in Christo Morimur, the Son God, per Spiritum Sanctum Revivissimos, the Spirit God, as the surrounding esoteric mystery of the foundation stone. And I would like to finish, dear friends, by just us all letting our eyes rest on the Christmas verse of the calendar of the soul. I apologize, it's my translation, but I try to be as faithful as I can. And especially, I would like to emphasize, one needs to keep the lines that Rudolf Steiner gave. That's very important. Because if we're not going to have exactly those mantric sounds that he puts in, at least there is a reason why we should keep the lines. And I will show you that right now. So the verse is, I feel as though freed from enchantment, the spirit child in the soul's lap. In the heart's brightness, the holy cosmic word has created hope, heavenly fruit, which jubilating grows in worlds afar, out of my being's godly ground. I leave it up to you to see if you want to agree with me or not, but here is Rudolf Steiner giving you the Trinity for Christmas. The spirit child comes into the soul's lap, the cosmic word is being addressed, and then there's a jubilation that goes into worlds afar. So you can see how if you begin to poeticize and change the lines, you are obliterating the Trinity, the impulse of the Trinity, so that Christmas can come after that. And with that, I thank you for your attention. And I want to also, besides having thanked my friends and colleagues at the Rudolf Steiner branch, I would also like to thank the people my friends at the Kolisko Institute, because as I always keep on emphasizing, a lot of this material we have worked through together on many occasions and in many aspects. But what's more important is that they make the sacrifice so that very often I can just withdraw for a little bit and put a couple of my modest thoughts together. So thank you again. I am finished with the presentation.
Thank you very, very much. Are we open for questions then?
If I can answer, if there's any, and if I can answer, sure.
Sounds good, sounds good. I'm going to, pardon me as I prep for this, everyone. I'm going to allow participants to unmute themselves again. I think the easiest way, if we can be orderly about it, is to use the reactions button to raise your hand if you have a question, and then I can spotlight your video if you want to share video. All right, so I see Stephen. So let me try to make that happen for you.
It's very nice that on a Stephen day, the first one who's asking a question is a Stephen.
Ah, I didn't know it was a Stephen day.
There is a name for every day after Christmas.
Ah,
And today it's Stephen Day.
oh, fantastic.
There you go.
That must be right then. So I live in New Zealand.
Oh.
My wife is Swedish, so I lived in Sweden for a little while as well. And I felt the calendar of the soul, the 12 holy nights, so easy to do in the Northern Hemisphere. And so when in the Southern Hemisphere, I've always done the calendar of the soul in reverse, because I feel I can connect much easier that way.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
what about the 12 holy nights? That's always been my question. So is it really a calendar year thing, or in the Southern Hemisphere, would I get a deeper connection if I did it midwinter? Tricky question.
I don't. Stephen was the first martyr, but since we're on Zoom, I cannot just hit you or something for asking that.
I can pretend. Yeah.
No, listen, listen. I know so many answers to this, but please allow me not to go into that right now,
Okay.
because you have on the one hand
I'll go back to speakers.
this concept, this comment that Rudolf Steiner makes to a man called Fred Puppy, and he was going to Brazil or Argentina, I forgot right now. It might be Argentina. And he says, hey, how should I do the calendar? And Rudolf Steiner says, very simple, just simply go 6 months later. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So we know that much. But does that apply to certain Christ moments? That I don't know. So that's you know, like, do you have Easter you know, on the northern hemisphere, but then 6 months later you have Easter again on this, or is it something that encompasses the entire earth? So just if one thinks about that, I think that the only answer that is not preposterous would be that we should all commonly meditate on it. Yeah. And by the way, this is what happens when you do the esoteric youth circle, that it was meant to be something that would allow people to meditate the same as a community, as a group. And let's see what answers we come up with.
Yes, thank you for that. I think I've been doing both anyway, but on a personal subjective experience, I do feel that deepening, doing it with the season. Yeah, but that's just my personal experience.
I mean, there's that lecture cycle with the 4 archangels, and Rudolf Steiner says that out of the snow arises the imagination. Out of the fire of the summer arises the imagination of Uriel. You're going to do that, Uriel, when there's snow around you? You know what I'm saying? So possibly, without now going into more details, possibly the Christ experience is above those 4 seasons.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have really become very aware of recently, and not so much before, is in the calendar of the soul, you have these correspondences that are not 6 months across, but rather that correspond, the first with the 52, the second verse with 51, the third verse with 50th, and so on. And that I'm working on right now. And we are going to, excuse me, we're going to bring out a little booklet that will have all the verses with our translation, with the eurythmy forms in them, which has never been published in English. So maybe that'll be an additional help for people to actually walk those eurythmy forms. And we will say in there what gestures you need to do with it, what consonants, etc. So that'll be helpful, hopefully. Okay.
Very much. Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
And to you too.
Thank you very, very much. I see Amy has a raised hand.
Go ahead.
That's actually okay. It's been answered. Thank you though. Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Any other questions? Valdemar?
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for the nice lecture, wonderful lecture. I wrote a question in the chat, but I'm going to read it. Could you say something why spirits of strength are associated with the first hierarchy, spirits of light to the second hierarchy, and spirits of soul to the third hierarchy in the foundation stone?
Yes, of course. You know, one has to be, I have to be careful as a speaker to not have the kind of, you know, pompous, preposterous attitude that I've seen in some speakers, where I have the answers. You ask, I'm answering, yeah? But I would like to share thoughts with you guys. So that's how it should be taken. It's the spirits of strength, because Rudolf Steiner is saying, let what comes from the heights find its echo in the depth. And the echo is the physical material being. So for example, he says, the violet is the echo of the Mercury planetary sphere. So that's the echo. The first hierarchy has the ability to go all the way into the physical world. And, you know, fatherly ground of all existence, so that your being becomes manifest. So the spiritual world becoming manifest in the physical world needs the first hierarchy. The light comes to the fact that here you're dealing with etheric forces. However, with the etheric forces that are involved in rhythmical activities. Like, for example, think of the moon forces that are causing for example, water to rise up in the clouds, and then the water falls down. So you have here a rhythmical activity, and yet it's water. So from that point of view, the etheric body is the light body, and that's the second hierarchy. And then, you know, you're working in the soul life, in the spirit, and that's the third hierarchy that has only the ability to affect us spiritually. In the foundation stone, those are the three moments that I see.
Thank you.
Thank you much. I see there's a couple of questions in chat. I'm going to try to make sure I can get those in order, but otherwise I also see Kathleen's hand up.
Yeah,
I'd
just
like to ask.
ignore her.
Okay.
No, don't.
Kathleen, would you like to ask a question?
From the sublime to the ridiculous. Would it be possible, Russ, for you to read this verse in German so I'll have it in the recording, please?
Which verse? Here, the calendar of the soul?
I feel as though freed from enchantment.
I will be happy to.
Thank you.
And that's not ridiculous by any means. Ich fühle wie entzaubert das Geisteskind im Seelenschoß. Es hat in Herzenshelligkeit erzeugt das heilge Weltenwort. Der Hoffnung Himmelsfrucht, die jubelnd wächst in Weltenfernen, last line, aus meines Wesens Gottes Grund. And you can see here the nuances, so that whenever one does a translation, it becomes a nuance, because it's the spirit child in the soul's lap. Now that's a particular imagination. And if you look at, there's many translations. I've seen one recently that says, I feel as though freed from enchantment, the spirit child in the soul's core gives it a slightly different understanding and intention than the Seelen shows, this lap that I don't know, has it close to the heart and some other nuances. But good, I've read it in German.
Thank you very much. I see a request and a couple of questions. The request, which I've just lost, I think it was to show the slides for the days of the week, if you'd be willing to. Thank you very much. And I've lost it, so I won't read it word for word, but I think it was from Barbara asking if you could elaborate. Oh, here we are. Can you elaborate on the health effects of eurythmy?
On the health effects of eurythmy?
That's what I see written, yes.
Eurythmy, in the sense that Rudolf Steiner, brings out one time the fact that all illness comes from the astral body, right? This drying out, the spasticity, the movement, etc., etc., etc. And the fact that then compared to that, he defines the etheric body as being the bearer of health. Now you put that together with the fact that we're talking about eurythmy being in the etheric body. Eurythmy is, so to speak, in the buddhi, in the life spirit. Now you have the Christ being there. So every time you do eurythmy, you are doing it, if you do it even at least slightly with respect and slightly with a little bit of feeling and heart forces, you are actually working with the Christ being, if that is the ultimate health. That's why eurythmy is the bearer of all health.
Thank you. That is a wonderful answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Florian mentions in the chat a question, if you'd like to ask your question, Florian.
Yes, I'm here in Honolulu.
Oh.
We don't have any snow here.
Hello.
Unless you go to the big island, the top of Mauna Kea. Apparently they had a blizzard up there a while back, but it's fairly pleasant weather here. So Christmas, we don't have anything that resembles the northern climate. But I had another area I was wanting to ask about, aside from the 100th anniversary coming up for the youth circle, the esoteric youth circle founding. There was the burning of the Goetheanum, which is a pivotal event in the life of the Michaelically inspired anthroposophical movement and society. And that it's this event of the burning that was the catalyst for the Christmas Foundation meeting a year later, where the metamorphosed foundation stone of the first Goetheanum was laid in the hearts of those 800 people or so that gathered on Dornach Hill. So that we're hearkening back to the laying of the foundation stone of the Goetheanum in 1913, when we are working with that foundation stone that was renewed on this esoteric level at the Christmas Foundation meeting, this double dodecahedral copper form that speaks of the union of microcosm and macrocosm. And the fact that with that burning of the Goetheanum, Rudolf Steiner's health was tremendously impacted, as though you could say a part of him and his being excarnated together with that burning Goetheanum. And he would later say that this Goetheanum is a living being, that it's still there in the etheric and spiritual world. And
Florian,
yes,
the question?
Rudolf Steiner was particularly concerned or sad about the fact that this building was lost for the English-speaking people who are helping to launch the consciousness soul, because they need to have the spiritual brought down to the physical as it was in the first Goetheanum. So that I would just ask your sort of view on the importance of this event being sort of celebrated, that this is a kind of a mystery temple where Rudolf Steiner is now working from, this excarnated Goetheanum that's a living being that was lost, but that we could re-find it on a new level with the help of the foundation stone meditation, which is like a seed out of which
Okay.
that building grew.
All right, let me think about that for a second. Okay, are there any, let me just see if there's any questions that are directly connected with what I presented before we go into this. So, Jonathan, anything?
Yeah, someone messaged me directly asking you to clarify that when you talk about the Christ or Michael touching us at night, do you mean physically touching, or can you otherwise clarify?
Soul spiritually. Look at the leading thoughts, where the whole concept of the human freedom consists in the fact that Michael and the Christ being are working with us in the soul spiritual realm, because if they would come down into the physical body and the etheric body, then that would interfere with our freedom. Then things would change, and then we would be different in the morning. Now we can get impulses, but these impulses have to be then led by us, you know, into our organization as we would want to and be able to.
Thank you very much. I see another request and a question. A request for the second eurythmy slide for Urvana, if you would.
This one?
They'll have to inform us if that's correct.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. And I see, are there specific remedies that might be useful in helping us connect to the spirit world at this time? From Colleen, thank you.
Well, thank you for asking. Dear friends, as you can imagine, I stayed away. I stayed away from that because I did not want to make it sound like, hey, here comes Ross, right? And we talk about the remedies. But since you ask, look at the three substances. And we have put all of that together with the frankincense, and the 3K stands for the three kings. So one can, the anthroposophical medicine is basically all based on the Trinity principle. Now, we can say that we can go back to the alchemical times, right? Where you have the solid as the Sol principle, SAL. Then you have the mercury principle as the rhythmical principle in the middle. And then you have the sulfuric principle, the fire, the aromas. And the alchemists used to combine these three together in a particular way. In anthroposophical medicine, we combine especially the so-called dorons that the Walida makes. And Rudolf Steiner gives specific recipes where you see that principle. And he says, well, you can't change it, because he says, I have brought these recipes down out of the spiritual world. Then he gives indications for what happens when you do dilutions. So you take a substance and you dilute it a number of times, and then it will work on the digestive system. And then you dilute it even more. Now it works on the rhythmical system, lung, heart. Then you dilute it even more, and it works now on the nerve sense system. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just, it all comes back to these three principles, this Trinity. And that allows the spiritual world to come in. And the problem, if I relate back to a question that was asked prior to this, the problem with modern medicine is that it willfully enters the physical body and changes structures. Most of the time, thank God, ignoring the spiritual, the soul spiritual. Sometimes, however, influencing it from below up. So this is the future of medicine for mankind, that one takes what we call nowadays the beginning, the seeds, the tiny beginning that we call anthroposophical medicine. And then in the future, this will become more and more a, how should I say, an art, how to do it. And Rudolf Steiner once said that unless the laboratory will become an altar, unless the laboratory table will become an altar table, and we've gone, at length through what happens at the altar. Unless that happens, science will not progress. So ask your anthroposophical doctors, ask the Walida, ask True Botanica, ask Colisco, but at the end of the day, there is a tremendous, let's not use the word too much, but there is a very significant help to our spiritual activity if we take these kinds of substances, myrrh, frankincense, gold, as an example, because we're at Christmas time. But otherwise, I could give you other examples. In fact, one that I'm preparing to talk about is a remedy that is made, that's been made from the beginning under Rudolf Steiner's prescription, called Coliodoron. So that is an interesting spiritual, mysterious remedy that he gives, connected physically to the gallbladder. And we've made it for decades out of curcumin and celandine. So next time we talk, I'll be very happy to show you some slides on that. Well, there are two substances that we need to mix. The curcumin has a big, very thick root. Celandine is all like feathery like that. So you say, oh, look, these two principles, are there. Until somebody one day discovered that there is actually a piece of paper where Rudolf Steiner wrote, unfortunately, 3 things. And we've always ignored the third one. Yeah. So something with pumpkin. So there you go. you know, that's one of the things that is happening. And that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about all of this so that we don't forget his gifts. So.
Thank you very much. I see there's one question in the public chat and someone sent a question to me directly. I'm not sure the context of this, maybe you will. Is Eurythmy going to be on the same link?
Everything that I've presented here that you see on the screen will be on the link. Yes.
Great, sounds
I
good.
think that's what the question was, right? All these eurythmy indications and stuff, all of that's why I went through it a little bit quickly, yeah, or very quickly, because it's available on the Colisco website. So yes, I would be happy if people would really study it and do it. We group of friends, yeah, we do at the turning point of time, you know, the EAO, with that we do it every day. You know, so that's one way to live with it.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Whenever we're finished, I have 2 comments. So.
Sure. I have one more question that was posed to me. Oh, I guess there's a new, no, just one more question that was posed to me. And then there was Florian's question if there's time.
Yeah.
Cool. So the one question that was sent to me was, is the human family at a point where each one needs to individually find a way out of the present world situation? Or is it a matter of a percentage of the collective to find the way?
Look, funny that that person, that friend, would ask that question, because I was just preparing before I started this presentation. I was preparing a little email to send out. So this is the the question to the answer, like Jeopardy, you know. So so the what is happening right now is that one of the anthroposophical doctors made the point that with other pandemics, it could be definitely seen that they excuse me, that they resulted from a destruction or a degradation or whatever, yeah, of the ecology, you know, earth processes. And this destruction then led to the appearance of the illness-causing organisms that were not there before. Now, you can say that that is due to this or that factor. We don't know exactly what this pandemic is caused by. So, if you think about it, I mean, not if you think about it, you've heard all sorts of theories. Some people say, well, it's a virus. Other people say there's no virus. It's all 5G. Other people say it's something else, okay? Everybody, however, agrees that something is actually happening in the world that is very destructive, very disturbing, okay? Now, there are people, there are, you know, prominent people who say the vaccines are horrible. Others say there's no problem with the vaccines. The issue, however, is that if you look at what Rudolf Steiner says, for example, on the climate change, I've talked about that. He says climate change to the earth is like a fever to the human being. When the human being is ill, he'll get a fever because he's trying to remedy something. At the earth sphere, morality, ethics have gone so far down that the earth is rebelling by creating a fever. If you keep that in mind, the thing that is a problem is that whether you say the vaccines are bad or whether you say the vaccines are good, you have not changed anything in the soul spiritual behavior of people. If you say vaccines are bad, well, what's left? What's left is more medications. Oh, is that suddenly so good? Is that just holy because, you know, it's something that's hidden? If you say vaccines are good, you haven't changed anything in the soul spiritual. So whether they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. You cannot remedy something out of the same principles that made the world sick to begin with. What is needed is new answers. That's what this whole lecture was all about. That you need new answers, and the new answers are only going to come from anthroposophy. The new answers are going to come only from eurythmy and from substances that are done new and from new meditations, from new, you know, cultuses, meaning Christian community, yeah, religious services, the new that anthroposophy brings. And that's why, to the great displeasure of some of our anthroposophical friends, we at Colisco have tried not to take a position for the good or the bad of what is already out there in culture, but just to bring whatever understandings we can out of anthroposophy. So how can you do that? How can you bring that into the world? Well, first of all, obviously, as an individual, you need to change and you need to change your behavior. But the one thing that is really critical is that I am so glad that that friend asked that question. It really gave me the opportunity to really make an important point. And the important point is that Rudolf Steiner one time, never mind what other gods he means, but he says the other gods have come for individual people, but the Christ being has come for a community. The Christ being has come to unite mankind. The more you have a community, the more the Christ can come in. Remember, I said way in the beginning that in the Christian community, it says Christ in you, and then it's suddenly one of the servers says, and may he fill your spirit. He's addressing the priest, but the priest is there to represent the community. So basically, the way it's called is Christ in you as an individual and Christ in the community as a whole, because that's how the Christ being wants to work. Of course, you cannot be not doing your share, because then you're not going to be part of the community. So the same thing with Michael. Michael needs to be approached in freedom by the individual person, but there is also a community that has been created by common working together. And of course, I'm not going to answer Florian's question, which takes us into a different direction. The only thing that I want to say in connection with that is that when the Goetheanum had burned, the circle friends went to Rudolf Steiner and said to him, can we help in any way? And Rudolf Steiner says, help, I have enough from the spiritual world. You need to do your meditation deeper and better. So that's an important one for us to all understand. So I would like to finish, if I may. The time is quite advanced, yeah? Because there's one more thing that I would like to share with you, that Rudolf Steiner at one point makes the comment that democracy, now everybody's ears really should be picking up. Oh my God, he's going to talk about democracy. Yes, Rudolf Steiner says that democracy has in it the ferment for decay and for stopping to work. I hope that everybody sort of takes a gulp at what I just said. democracy has the ferment in itself to die, unless it has three things. One, understanding the existence of the spiritual world. Two, valuing the human being. And three, observing the work of the Spirit in nature. Let's rephrase that. And then let's make sure that we don't go so deep that the 12 holy nights are going to be gone. So the point is, democracy needs the power of the Trinity. It needs to know, we need to know that there is a spiritual world from which we came. We need to work in such a way that we are valuing the human being because the Christ is in the human being. And we need to look around us into the future, what we do with nature, because that's where the Spirit, God, is going to go next. So with that, I just wanted to show you that all this discussion that we've had, if we really do deeply our anthroposophical work, then we will have done the best that we can to save democracy. And once we've said that, then we know that we've not wasted our time, and we're not part of a sect, and we're not just sort of ignoring the problems of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you again. I might have some brief announcements for other things going on in the Holy Nights. Andre, is there anything you wanted to say before we? But yeah.
Dear Ross, thank you so much for your outstanding presentation, and Jonathan, dear friends. Yeah, I would use opportunity to invite you for tomorrow's session with Leland Harris. Leland, I know you are here. Would you like to make a short 1-minute introduction of what you're going to talk about? Leland?
Well, yes.
Very short.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I was actually just starting to write in the chat to Ross my great gratitude for his closing thoughts. What Ross has brought for us today, plus that last closing thought, is a perfect transition. Everything sets up what I'm bringing tomorrow, including I'll be returning to the Christmas conference, just as Ross did. I think that's enough. Ross said everything. Come back tomorrow and we'll take some of Ross's indications one more step.
Dear friends, 2:00 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, same link. Dear Ross, thank you again. Thank you so much. Dear friends, we're waiting for you too. Okay, please feel free, unmute yourself and say thank you to Ross and to each other. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Ross.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you so much, Ross.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you,
Ross.
Andre.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It is Ross. For the rest of my life.
Thank you all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Love you.
I'll mention briefly for the remaining people that in addition to what the program committee is doing, Jan Rank is doing Eurythmy at the Chicago branch. So if you're in Chicago and have an interest, I believe that starts in a few minutes, but she's doing it for several days. And then also Elderberries has volunteered to come on down and enjoy these presentations with them in person. So thank you all again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.